Goeienaand, baie welkom by Fokus. Ek is Lenet Fransis Puren. Vanaand fokus ons op die veiligheid van Suid-Afrika se drinkwater. Meer as 23 mense is die afgelope 2 weke oorlede sedert die cholera-uitbreking in Hammanskraal, noord van Pretoria. Een van die oorledenes was nie van Hammanskraal nie, maar van die Vrystaat. Die presiese oorsprong van die uitbreking word steeds bepaal, maar talle kenners het al kommer uitgespreek oor die veiligheid van Suid-Afrika se watersuiwerings en sy Rooiwal-watersuiweringsaanlegte. Professor Anthony Turton van die Vrystaatse Universiteit se Sentrum vir Omgewingsbestuur het die week weer gewaarsku dat die land se stelsels vinnig in duie stort. Om te hoor wat die gevaar is en hoe ernstig dit is ons nou in gesprek via Zoom met Professor Turton. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. The red flags, however, Professor, has been flickering since the year 2000.
Yes, absolutely. And let's just take the viewer back to some historic realities. The first historic reality is that we have a world-class reporting system known as the blue and green drop reporting standard. That is designed to keep track of all of the multiple wastewater works and bulk water works in the country. That was unilaterally suspended by Nomvula Mokonyane when she was Minister of Water. It has been recently reinstated by Minister Senzo Mchunu. So I think the first thing we must do is we must be excited by the fact that he has reinstated it. And then we mustn't be alarmed by the fact that the very reporting that this is designed to show has shown why it was suspended in the first place. And that is because our water quality or our water processes have been failing. So the numbers that we put out are in fact not my numbers. Those are numbers that come out of very reliable national data sets. If you can measure it, you can manage it, and you can mitigate it. That's the important thing.
But that report that Senzo Mchunu reinstated says that about 90% of the wastewater treatment in our country is dysfunctional.
Yes, it's dysfunction. That 90% is a range of dysfunction. Within that 90% is a smaller number, 40%, which is totally dysfunctional. So that 90% includes 40 that's dysfunctional, completely, totally non-functional, and then thereafter there's a whole range of different parameters of different degrees of functionality. So the important thing is that 90% of our wastewater works, according to government's own measurement standards, are non-compliant. And of course, that all goes into our national water resource, the rivers and dams, and that all then gets processed either into industry, industrial processes, or agriculture for the production of food, etc., or into our bulk water treatment plant for the production of our drinking water. So therefore, what's incoming is already contaminated, which now means that the cost of treating that for whatever it is that you're going to treat it for is now also increasing. So these are the known facts at the moment. But we mustn't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. We mustn't necessarily panic about this, because now that we know about it, we can do something about it.
I understand that, but I do want our viewers to understand the extent of the issues that we are grappling with here, particularly with regards to what we could have averted and where we are now at, and the implications of that 40% dysfunction that you alerted to earlier.
Yes, I think we can quite safely say that we are looking at systemic failure. So it's failure across the entire system, but because the system is a complex system, if my memory serves me correctly, we've got about 1,000 sewage plants, I think, and about 800 bulk potable water plants in the country, plus minus in that sort of order. And most of those are managed by municipalities. So some municipalities are better than others. So it's a nuanced sort of picture. But certainly we can say without any fear of contradiction that we are seeing systemic failure across the country. And now this opens up a whole series of issues. One of them is public health, yes, which is what we're talking about tonight. There's another thing now about the economy, the cost of the economy. What does that mean in terms of production processes or risk that companies are now starting to take on, etc.? That's a whole different category, a whole different ball of wax, and we're working on that at the moment as well. So that's the reality. The reality is that we are seeing systemic failure, and not only are we seeing systemic failure, we're also seeing an inadequate response to that systemic failure, because let's just give one example. With the recent Hammanskraal case, now all of a sudden there's an attempt to go and unlock a couple of billion rand from the Treasury to go and fix a problem that has not yet been defined. So no one actually knows what the real problem is that they're trying to fix, but they're trying to unlock a couple of billion rand to throw at this. And we learned from the Mfuleni case, when the wastewater works in Vereniging started failing, where that initially cost 1 billion rand, that made no difference. Then the SANDF was brought in to fix it up. They were unable to. It cost another 1 billion rand. Then Ervat was brought in to fix it up, another 1 billion rand, and they couldn't fix it up. So 3 billion rand later, we still haven't fixed up the basic problem because no one's defined what the basic problem is. So we're in the sort of headless chicken mode at the moment now, and that's the danger. That's the real risk to society. So what we have to start doing now is adopting fundamental engineering principles, and that is we need to do an analysis, a root cause analysis, to know what it is that actually is causing the failure, because that is what has to be fixed up. And unless we know what that is to be fixed up, we could throw another 100 billion rand at it, and we're still not going to fix it, but we're going to be 100 billion rand poorer.
So just after the break, I want us to explore the reasoning of some of the municipalities that say it is because of load shedding, lack of maintenance and a shortage of funds that we are sitting in this water predicament. I'd like to hear your thoughts after the break. Net hierna praat ons verder. Daar is nog baie vrae oor die veiligheid van ons drinkwater. Bly by ons, want dit raak jou water en myne. Nou terug. Die veiligheid van ons drinkwater is vanaand in die kollig hier op Fokus. Hoe ernstig is die bedreiging en wat kan gedoen word om dit te voorkom? Ons sit ons gesprek voort via Zoom met professor Anthony Turton. Hy is by die Vrystaatse Universiteit se Sentrum vir Omgewingsbestuur. So a lot of the municipalities, Professor Turton, has said that there's been a lack of funding, so there's a lack of maintenance, shortage of funding, and also blaming load shedding that has exacerbated the challenges that we are sitting with. Do you agree with that? Is that justified? Or is that just creating another wave to back up the problem?
Yeah, out of hand, I reject that. When I hear people say that we just need more money, immediately it's a red flag, because what has actually happened is that the procurement processes have now been captured by criminal syndicates. That's really what's actually happened. And that's why we must do the root cause analysis. The work that I've done, for example, at Rooiwal, has quite clearly shown with a massive amount of data going back to 2001, I think it was. Well, we've got 3 very specific failures at Rooiwal. The first failure we've got is an institutional process failure. The institution has failed. The second one is the engineering processes have failed, so the pumps and machinery has failed. And then the third one has been a failure of the procurement process. And so, yeah, unless you fix the institutional failures, no matter how much money you unlock at this thing, you're simply going to get an inadequate design for your engineering solutions, and your procurement process that has been captured is simply going to siphon off the money into the existing syndicates. So we've got to start off with understanding those 3 families, those 3 clusters of problem. That's institutional problems, it's engineering problems, and it's the procurement problems. And once we understand that, now we're starting to solve these problems. But now we can only do this by getting credible people to actually go and do these root cause analyses at every single failed wastewater works. Are we fixing a broken pump? That means one thing. Are we fixing someone that's stolen the process, or that's hijacking the allocation of funds for some politically connected person? That's completely a different kettle of fish. What are we dealing with? Which of those three fundamental processes are we dealing with?
Given the challenges that we're sitting with, surely a multifaceted approach is required. You've alerted to the fact that there's been an inadequate response thus far. We can't surely wait for one thing to happen and then respond to the next step.
Yes, I'm on the record of saying, and I will say it again now, that we are facing an existential crisis in the water sector. And I've gone on record before saying, and I'll say it again now, this is actually a crisis of national security risk, Because what we're seeing here now, you've got 23 people dead, a whole lot more that have been injured. But what about your businesses? What about your companies? What about investors? Which investor is going to make a decision to invest into the South African economy when there's an existential crisis in the water sector that's on top of another crisis in the energy sector, that's on top of another crisis in the governance space? So we've got to fix all of these things up. And we don't fix these things up by beating our chest and waving our hands in frustration and anger and just throwing lots of money at it, because we don't have that much more money left. We've got to start being wise about this now. We've got to depoliticize it. We've got to turn it into a set of technical issues that are managed by technically competent people. That's what we've got to do. And then we're going to solve these problems quite quickly.
I've read analyses of one writer saying that what we are possibly going to experience is a collapse of the water infrastructure within municipalities, because we've always just been thinking that it's a rural problem, but now it's on our doorstep.
It has already collapsed. And this is whenever I talk to journalists and they ask me, is there a looming water crisis? We are deep in this crisis. We've known about this crisis since 2002. Let's just unpack that a little bit now. Let's look at East London, Port Elizabeth, where you've got day zero looming there for how long now?
Yes.
That is the epicenter of the motor vehicle manufacturing capability of the entire national economy. How can that survive when they're down to, I don't know what the current levels are in Pogings Dam, etc., but I mean, they're very, very low. So how can the motor car industry survive after having flooded in Durban in the recent past, where the Toyota production plant was wiped out? So it's an existential crisis for those cities. Cape Town has come through the crisis. They're still limping through it. They haven't restored investor confidence yet. Richards Bay and Durban have got the same sort of problems. And guess what? So does Johannesburg and Pretoria. So all of our major centres have got these problems. And while we are talking about these problems, you and I now, and the audience, well, guess what? There's no consensus reached between the political parties about who's going to be the mayor and who's going to get what portfolio. So while we are talking serious stuff, the people that should be talking serious stuff are busy twiddling their fingers, and they don't seem to understand just how serious this is. So we are sitting in a state of existential crisis. It's a national security crisis, in my professional opinion. That's where we are. It's water and energy and ultimately social stability. But ultimately, all of this reports back to the bottom line. Can companies grow? Can companies employ people? And I'll close off by saying, unless we can create sustained economic development to employ the current born-free generation, we need economic growth of about 7% per annum for the next decade or two. Unless we can seriously talk about that, then I'm afraid we're just wasting our time. We may as well just pack up and go home. So this is an existential crisis. It's going to change the fundamental trajectory of the South African economy. Smart companies are going to adapt accordingly. They're going to come out on top. Not smart companies, they're going to go a different route. But this is going to affect every one of us. We're not approaching crisis. We are deep in that crisis already.
Thank you so much for your time this evening on Fokus, Professor Anthony Turton, wat daar vir ons 'n nugtere gevaarligte eintlik uitwys oor hoe groot hierdie krisis werklik is. Bly ingeskakel, net hierna praat ons met 'n mediese dokter oor die gevare van cholera en of ons net uitgelewer is. Bly by ons. Soos ons vroeër vanaand genoem het, is meer as 23 mense reeds dood weens cholera. Maar hoe versprei die siekte en watter voorsorgmaatreëls kan getref word om te voorkom dat jy siek word? Ons is nou via Zoom in verbinding met Dr. Cloete van Vuuren. Hy is by die 3 Militaire Hospitaal in Bloemfontein en hy's 'n kenner op die gebied van infeksies. En baie dankie dat jy vanaand by ons aangesluit het. Hoe ontstaan so 'n cholera-uitbreking, Dr. van Vuuren?
Ek dink net dit gaan maar suiwer daaroor dat 'n mens in kontak kom met water wat nie behandel is nie, wat iemand anders met riool besoedeling. Hierdie cholera-uitbraak kom eintlik al van 1961 af, maar dit maar so deur die wêreld trek, is dieselfde organisme. In Malawi het hulle groot probleem, daar is in Zimbabwe, Mosambiek, Bangladesh is dieselfde organisme, Indië is daar jaar in en jaar uit hierdie uitbrake en daar gaan omtrent 600,000 mense per jaar hieraan dood. So dis nie niets vir die wêreld nie, dis iets niets vir ons. En ek dink die punt van die saak is, die naam cholera is in die ou dae gebruik vir enige diarree. En toe dit later spesifiek nou net hierdie een organisme geword, maar dit verduidelik net vir jou dat jy kan nie cholera onderskei op die simptome nie, dis suiwer iemand wat diarree het. En jy wat net ligte simptome het en jy kan nie hierdie erge diarree waar hulle heeltemal dehydreer en dit is die ding wat die mense doodmaak. En dis die ding wat ons die mense in die hospitale moet vooropneem. So het hierdie hele spektrum van die siekte.
Okay, hou net so vas. Ekskuus tog, dokter. Hou net vir my vir 'n oomblik daar vas. Ons het tegniese probleme, so ek hoor jou nie baie duidelik nie, maar as ek gou kan opsom, wat jy sê is daar's 'n spektrum van simptome wat 'n persoon kan hê. Een daarvan is diarree, maar ook heeltemal gedehidreerd wees. Is ek korrek en voeg by?
Goed, die spektrum is dat party mense het geen simptome nie en hulle kan nog steeds die waterbron besoedel. Party mense het 'n ligte diarree soos mens maar dit ons almal maar ken van iets eet wat af is of in kontak kom met een of ander kiem en dan aan die heel ander einde van die spektrum het jy hierdie oorweldigende diarree waar die mense heeltemal gedehidreerd raak. En dit is die mense wat nou in die hospitale beland, maar al hierdie mense op die hele spektrum, as daai riool in die water beland en nie behandel word nie, steek dit die volgende aan.
So, omdat dit so sterk verbind word met water, het ons nou gesien baie van die sterftes was in Hammanskraal omgewing, maar daar was ook 'n sterfte van 'n persoon in die Vrystaat wat wel in Hammanskraal was. So as daar so 'n sterk konnotasie met water is, hoe word hy geïnfekteer en hoe draai dit dan nou letterlik oor?
Ek dink daar's twee moontlikhede. Iemand uit die Vrystaat was in Hammanskraal, hy het daar aangesteek en toe 'n waterbron in Parys of waar ook al anders te besoedel. Ek het nou net gesê, Malawi, Zimbabwe en Mosambiek het op die oomblik groot probleme met cholera. En daai eerste geval as jy reg onthou net, het so dit kan net so wees en in Parys die waterbron besoedel en nou die mense daar ook 'n uitbraak. So dit is nie noodwendig dat almal by presies dieselfde plek aangesteek het nie. Maar die ooglopende ding is seker maar dat iemand Parys in Hammanskraal was of iemand van Hammanskraal Parys was.
Kan ek net gou vir jou onderbreek, dokter van Vuuren? Wat is, dit klink vir my asof daar 'n ripple effek is, dat jy word geïnfekteer en dan raak jy siek en jy het nou een of ander van hierdie simptome wat jy genoem het, almal nie noodwendig dieselfde simptome nie. Hoe lank vat dit vanaf daai oomblik van infeksie om te presenteer met hierdie simptome wat dan so drasties lei tot moontlike sterftes?
Ja, okay. So ek dink so kom ons sê dit dan nou net weer mooi duidelik. Party mense gaan nie eers simptome ontwikkel nie. Maar as hulle nie hulle hande was nie en die riool beland in die drinkwater, dan steek hulle ander mense aan. Goed, dis die eenheid. Die mense wat siek word, dit kan letterlik 3 tot 4 ure nadat hulle in die kontak met die water was, kan hulle begin diarree ontwikkel. En dit kan selfs so 4 of 5 dae voordat hulle die diarree ontwikkel en simptome kry. En dit maak dit dikwels bietjie moeiliker om presies om die gemeenskaplike bron te bepaal.
Kan daar in daai tydsvak nog intervensie wees? Moet jy by jou hospitaal uitkom? Kan jy jouself behandel? Kan jy byvoorbeeld na 'n kliniek toe gaan?
Ja. Ek sê die hele beginsel van die behandeling hierso is antibiotika werk nie regtig nie. Dit maak dit miskien 'n bietjie korter. Die kruks van die behandeling is om die dehydrasie te voorkom. So dit beteken daai vog wat hulle verloor, moet hulle net inneem. En die oorgrootste meerderheid van mense, as hulle net genoeg water drink, en nou mense die oorhaal die dehydrasievloeistowwe, en daar's allerlei resepe. Die eenvoudigste is 'n liter water met 'n half teelepel sout en 6 teelepel suiker. Dan sê mense kan selfs 'n bietjie piesang daarby vy maak wat net bietjie kalium bevat, en hulle drink soveel as moontlik van dit. En die oorgrootste meerderheid van mense het net dit nodig. Maar dan op die ergste spektrum, waar hierdie mense hierdie massiewe diarree het, kan bybly deur iets te drink nie, en moet hulle dan 'n drip opkry om daai vog te vervang totdat die diarree dan van self ophou. En dit is die grondbeginsel van die behandeling. So jy kan oorgrootste meerderheid mense sal die probleem is, en wat mense onderskat, is die spoed waarteen mense dehydreer. So dit kan binne 2-3 ure kan hulle so siek wees dat hulle doodgaan. En dis daai mense wat jy vinnig by die hospitaal moet kry. Maar die meeste mense wat net 'n bietjie ligte diarree kan genoeg vog drink om oor die ding te kom.
As jy 'n verswakte immuunstelsel het, sou ek aanneem dat jy dan vinniger sal presenteer of dit meer gevaarlik vir jou sal wees.
Jy weet, dis jou ouer mense met suikersiekte, in Suid-Afrika. Enige van hierdie goed gaan maak dat die siekte erger is en dat hulle vinniger in die moeilikheid gaan.
Jy het gepraat van wat jy kan doen om seker te maak jy kry water of vloeistof in. 'n Vinnige manier van wat 'n veilige manier is om die water te behandel. Kook jy dit? Is dit voldoende?
Ja, kyk, kook is 'n baie goeie idee, seker maar net nie in Suid-Afrika nie. In Suid-Afrika moet jy elektrisiteit nodig om water te kook.
Ja.
'n Baie ander eenvoudige manier is om 'n 20 liter water met net 'n doppie jig, 5 liter jig, hierdie gewone huishoudelike bleikmiddel, en as jy dit vir 2 ure laat staan, is daai water heeltemal veilig. Mens kan die water ook filter, en daar's allerlei ander maniere om die water veilig te maak, maar die kruks van die saak hier is om mense van veilige skoon drinkwater te voorsien, en dis waaroor al die opvoedingsprogramme ook gaan, en wat julle dan ook doen. Dus mense moet sorg dat hulle veilig behandelde water drink, en as hulle dit nie uit 'n kraan uit kan kry nie, kan jy dit of kook, of net met jig behandel, mens kan dit filter, daar's baie maniere, solank die water net skoon is.
Baie dankie vir jou tyd vanaand, Dr. Cloete van Vuuren. Waardeer daardie waardevolle inset van jou vanaand. Asseblief, maar ek tog verseker dat jy weet wat die hoeveelhede is as jy gaan kook of as jy jig wil byvoeg of enige ander die sout en die suiker, maak net seker jy weet wat jy doen. Moenie net kanse vat en dink dit gaan jou red nie, asseblief. Matigheid vir oë, wees asseblief versigtig. Maar so van water gepraat, aanstaande week vertel ons van 'n jong man wat ten spyte van bitter moeilike omstandighede met 'n beurs van die departement van waterwese gaan studeer het en nou gegradueer het. Maar ongelukkig is dit nou vanaand die einde van ons program. Moenie vergeet nie, volgende week Vrydag aand om 8:30, dan is ons weer hier op SABC 2, skakel gerus in om saam te kuier. Soek ons ook op YouTube, ons is steeds daar beskikbaar. Baie dankie vir jou terugvoer en jou insette. Ons groet dan tot volgende week. Geniet die naweek en dankie dat jy by ons aangesluit het. Totsiens.